Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Macy Flault, Associate Director for Cooperative Agreements here with the Institute of Child Nutrition. I would like to welcome you to today's STAR webinar, Strategies Utilizing Standardized Recipes. During today's webinar, all attendees are in mute mode. There will be a time for questions following each presenter's presentation. If you have a question, please type it into the question box on your screen. Handouts are available and can be downloaded directly from your webinar panel. We will try to get to as many questions as possible today, but due to our time constraints, we may not be able to get to each one. Participants will receive an email 24 hours after the conclusion of the webinar. Please complete the evaluation survey attached. ICN will send out the certificates within 48 hours of survey completion. To assist in meeting the unique training, technical assistance, and professional development needs of school nutrition professionals, ICN has launched the School Nutrition STAR initiative, which assists school nutrition professionals in developing goals and best practices to improve program administration and operations. The School Nutrition STAR program offers a multitude of elements, including face-to-face workshops, virtual instructor-led trainings, webinars, and it spotlights success stories from across the nation. The Institute of Child Nutrition has collaborated with USDA to host these monthly STAR webinars. These webinars offer training, real-life strategies of program implementation, best practices to incorporate into action plans or goals. Training topics, free resources, and educational materials are also highlighted to assist school nutrition professionals with navigating through the enhanced responsibilities of school nutrition operations. The Institute has created a website that you see on your screen, and this is where we list all of the materials, the resources, and the recorded webinars. Thank you for joining today's webinar, Strategies for Utilizing Standardized Recipes. The topic covered in today's webinar falls under Key Area Operations and meets the USDA Professional Standard Code for Food Production 2110. Our panelists today are Pat Richardson, who is an Education and Training Specialist here at the Institute. She earned her master's degree in higher education and a bachelor's degree in home economics from the University of Mississippi. Pat was a school nutrition director in Mississippi for 6 years. She has taught as an adjunct instructor, food preparation classes and labs, in the Nutrition and Hospitality Management Department here at the University of Mississippi. In 2006, Pat joined the Institute of Child Nutrition, where she has been developing training resources and online courses for the Institute for the past 11 years. We also have Heather Plain, who is a Child Nutrition Director for Bonneville School District 93 in Idaho Falls, Idaho. Heather began her career in child nutrition in 2004. She worked part-time as a cook and 2 years before joining the Child Nutrition Administration as an assistant director, and in 2011 became the director. She has such a great love for children and feels like she makes a difference in their lives in her district. Heather and her amazing staff have worked diligently to bring healthier options to the school children there in her district. She has participated on 2 different panels with the USDA at ANC Boston and ANC San Antonio. She was also a presenter for CDC on reducing sodium in school meals. Heather has a bachelor's degree in business management from Brigham Young University in Idaho. She is married and has 2 children. Our learning objective for today is that attendees will be able to identify strategies for utilizing standardized recipes. Pat, I turn the presentation over to you now.
Good afternoon, everyone. As you know, today we're going to be talking about standardized recipes. And I'd like us to look at the actual definition that USDA has given us for what a standardized recipe is. It's one that has been tried, adapted, and retried several times for use by a given food service operation and has been found to produce the same good results and yield every time when the exact procedures are used and the same type of equipment and the same quantity and quality of ingredients. If you have a recipe in your kitchen that's been standardized, will that same recipe be that's produced at school A as it will be at school B if school A cooks that product on a tilt skillet and school B cooks the product in a convection oven? Well, actually no, because if you look at the definition, it says exact procedures are used on the same type of equipment. So you have to standardize your recipes for your school and your equipment. And you may not have the equipment that is used to prepare the original recipe. Okay, so why should you use standardized recipes? Let's look at some of the benefits of using standardized recipes. Thank you. They produce reliable nutrition content. They provide consistent meal component contributions. They also provide consistent calories, saturated fat, and sodium. Another advantage is their food safe practices. The food safe preparation steps include avoiding cross-contact and cross-contamination. They also provide critical control points for time and temperature. A third advantage is product quality and quantity management. They provide consistently high quality food items. The yield is the same quality as product each time. They also indicate multiple serving yields based on different portion amounts. For example, cup portions versus cup portions for different grade groups. Some other advantages include reliable production forecasting. You can predict the number of portions from each recipe accurately. That also eliminates excessive amounts of leftovers or needs for substitutions. Standardized recipes are great for cost control because they specify specific amounts of ingredients to purchase. And that helps you to manage your inventory and storage through predictable ingredient use. Another is positive expectations. Your staff build confidence because they know they will produce a standard quality product. It also encourages student participation because they know what to expect each time that product is produced. And you build program reputation within broader school community. Your stakeholders, like your principals and teachers, your community, they will know what to expect each time you produce that product. But there are a lot of other things you can learn from a standardized recipe. The parts of the standardized recipe tell you an awful lot. You've got your recipe name. It also has a number. If it's a USDA standardized recipe, it has a number, and you may be numbering your recipes as well. The meal category, such as entree, fruits, vegetables. Serving size, that's very important depending on the age of child you're going to be serving. And then the pan size. Also, ingredients are listed, and that gives you the weight and the measures, volume measures of each ingredient, gives you directions on how to prepare that product with your critical control points. And then the cooking time and temperature, the yield or number of servings you're going to produce, and the equipment and utensils you need to use to produce that product. Standardized recipes and production records work together like a team. The recipes will provide your staff with foods needed to prepare the recipe, recipe number, quantity the recipe makes, portion size to serve, and meal components or categories of the food item. Standardized recipes ensure quality and nutritional consistency that can be used in procurement, inventory, and labor management. Now, production records provide historical data that can be used to forecast trends, identify student preferences, and plan future menus. They tell your staff what foods and recipes to use, the quantities to prepare, the amounts of portion and portion size, and meal component contribution. So you can see how standardized recipes and production records work together like a team. Your staff can document the actual quantities prepared and total meals served, as well as a la carte items. Your production records and standardized recipes work together to confirm that the menus meet the National School Lunch Program and the School Breakfast Program requirements for reimbursable meals. What do I do here?
Now we have a polling question for you. Tom Hunter, would you launch our question?
Oh. Okay, what are the 3 steps to standardizing a recipe? Purchase food, mix ingredients, serve students. The second one is review recipe, gather ingredients, prepare the recipe. Or the third one, verify original recipes, evaluate the product, adjust the quantity. And the fourth is weigh and measure ingredients, prepare the product, and serve the students.
If you all will take a few minutes and choose your selection, please.
Okay, it looks like verify original recipe, evaluate the product, and adjust the quantity. And that's the correct answer. We've got about 40% of you who chose that one. That's good. Okay, so let's talk about how to standardize a recipe. The 3 phases are verify the recipe, evaluate the product, and adjust the quantity. Verifying the recipe, what you need to do is review and prepare the original recipe in a small quantity, such as 25 servings. You note the missing ingredients, preparation steps, and any of the equipment. Note any substitutions you may have to make. Say if you have an ingredient in the recipe that you can't get in your area, you may need to substitute something for that. So that's what you would write in on the recipe. And then you make notes of any variations you have to make. You weigh and measure the ingredient amounts carefully, making sure that you get the right amount. Record any changes, and then transfer that recipe to your standardized format. The second step is evaluate the product. This phase will help you determine if the product is acceptable by your school team and you want to continue making that recipe. The first evaluation is informal and an important step in recipe development. The evaluation may include 3 choices. The product is acceptable, the product is acceptable but needs some modification, and the product is unacceptable. The formal evaluation should include your students. And this evaluation, you will want to address the appearance, flavor, and qualities such as hot or cold, moist or dry, mouthfeel, and the aroma of the food. Now, the students are going to evaluate the product different than your school nutrition team. You want to prepare the recipe for evaluation, summarize your results, and then determine the next step, which is, are you going to accept the recipe as it is? Are you going to modify the recipe until it is acceptable, or just reject it altogether? The third step is adjustment in the quantity. When the recipe is accepted, you will need to adjust it for quantity production. This is done using the factoring method. You take the number of servings that you want, the desired yield there, such as 250, and you divide that by the current yield. Most of your recipes are in 50 and 100, so you want to divide the 250 by the 100 to get a factor of 2.5. And you will take the 2.5 and multiply the ingredients by that number to get your new measurement. And one thing you don't want to do is to round off that ingredient. Let's say you get 2.25 cups of flour. You want to stay with 2.25 cups of flour. Don't round it down to 2. That will make the recipe different than what it is. There are some ingredients that you don't use this type of factoring to get that, and that's the herbs and spices, your leavening agents such as baking powder, baking soda, and yeast, your thickening agents like flour, cornstarch, and eggs, or liquids such as water, juice, stock. The best method to determine the quantities of these specific ingredients is to prepare the recipe and adjust. Okay, are there any questions? Okay, are there any handouts? No, the presentation will be the handout that you get with this one.
The presentation will be available on the ICM website once the presentation has been recorded and posted to the site.
Okay, one of the questions was, when you make the 25 servings, what do you do with those servings? Well, that's what you're testing with your team. They are the ones sampling that and deciding if it's acceptable as it is, or if you're going to modify it or just totally reject it altogether. Okay, one of the questions is, what is a reasonable time for this process? You're probably going to look at maybe 3 to 4 weeks, because you want to be able to adjust your ingredients and get the right flavors that the students will accept. All right, those servings aren't going to be enough to serve for lunch. Well, the 25 won't, no. That's for your staff. You will need to make whatever sample size you think will do and pick, let's say you've got any kind of student organizations. Pick some of those kids, your football team, your basketball team, band, choir. Pick some students out of those groups and have them test. And that way you can just pick 25 and serve them the 25. Okay, one question is, when standardizing a recipe, getting the original recipe, evaluating the product, and adjusting the quantity, how do you adjust the nutrient value? You're going to have to get a nutrient analysis software to do that. Another one is, did I hear correctly that when you adjust ingredients, you don't adjust herbs and spices, leavening? You do adjust them, you don't adjust them using that factoring method. There's a different way of doing those, and we don't have time to go into that here. Okay, another question is, what is the most effective way of getting feedback from taste tests with elementary age kids? Use your smiley faces. They understand that. Have a smiling face, have a face with a straight mouth, and then have one with a frown, and that will tell you whether they like them or not. Okay, are the recipes from USDA and MyPlate already standardized recipes? Yes, they are standardized recipes, but you may have to re-standardize those recipes for your school because you don't know what equipment they use, and you may have to find other ingredients to go in there. So you will need to re-standardize those. Thank you for all your questions, and we'll try to get to them, but we need to turn the presentation over to Heather now. Heather?
Good afternoon. I'm happy to be participating in this webinar today, and just wanted to thank Teresa for the opportunity. Even though she's not able to be with us, my hope is that I can add a few ideas or some strategies to help with standardizing recipes. My name is Heather Plain, and I'm the Child Nutrition Director for Bonneville School District in Idaho. We serve portions of Idaho Falls, Ammon, and the remainder of Bonneville County. Our enrollment is just under 13,000 students. We have 19 full-service kitchens, and of that we have 3 high schools, 2 middle schools, and 14 elementary schools. We're a growing district, and this year added our 3rd high school. In 2020, we'll add an additional middle school and are in the process of exploring bonding for an additional elementary school. So our area is growing very rapidly. Currently, our free and reduced percentage is 37%, and our average daily participation for breakfast is 13% and lunch for 37%. Standardized recipes are important to ensure that the precise ingredients create the desired end product. Restaurants use standardized recipes to ensure their products are the same no matter what location we're eating at. As child nutrition professionals, we want the same pattern and we want the same result at each of our schools. As children are moving between schools, we want them to have the stability and comfort to know that food will be the same in each kitchen. In 2016, our school district hired a consultant to come and give us some feedback on our operations. We were interested in time motion management and improving our efficiencies when we decided to invite them in. Our unemployment is very low, and we're having a very difficult time staffing all of our positions. We were hoping to find ways to do things with less labor. We looked at finance, production, forecasting, menu variety, and the overall picture of our program. One thing that really struck me when the consultant was here is she brought 7 different recipes for our managers to produce. She divided the managers into groups and gave each of them a separate recipe. She gave some guidance, but did not have to be at every station at once. Our managers were able to take the recipe and produce it. The great thing was that the recipes turned out exactly as expected and were beautifully presented. These managers did not know ahead of time what it was supposed to look like or how it was to be presented. The takeaway for us was that our recipes needed to include more thorough instruction so there would be little room for error. One of the recommendations from our consultant was to engineer and standardize recipes to improve inconsistency in food quality from site to site. It sounded like a terribly large task when you incorporate the word engineering with standardizing our recipes. Our individual kitchen had made improvements to the recipes, but for their kitchens only. Tips and tricks to make the recipes were on a school-by-school basis. The enhancements had not been shared globally throughout the district. Initially, we looked at our recipes to ensure that the ingredients were standard and that the recipes had been tried and tested, very similar to the way that Pat has described on this webinar today. The one thing that stood out to us is that we found out that our instructions needed a lot of work. As a director, I'm constantly worrying about new employees coming in that have very little culinary experience and them being able to be successful with our recipes. Our menu planner had worked in the kitchen for many years and is very talented. Kitchen production comes natural to her. When she transitioned to menu planner, she inherited a lot of existing recipes. Some of the instructions were confusing at best. I tried to look from the perspective or through the eyes of our new employees. I played devil's advocate a lot and asked the obvious and sometimes annoying questions. For example, do we use parchment? Do we spray the pan? How many items per pan? What kind of pan do we use? Do we transfer it when we get it out of the oven? The number one question was, can someone with little experience in the kitchen be successful when they prepare our recipes? The result was improved communication and improved recipes and more consistent quality. We established some standards for what must be included in each set of instructions. We wanted to make sure that it included the oven temperature, how to prepare the pans, which step included mixing the ingredients. If it was multiple steps, then it needed to be clarified. Do we bake in the same pan that we serve, or will it be transferred to a new serving dish? What should the temperature be of the finished product? How long should it take to get there? How is it to be held? How is it to be served? Wrapped, cupped, boated? So there was many, many questions. So we tried to include that on as we're producing our recipe instructions. After the consultant left our district, we created a MARD team, a menu and recipe development team. We decided it was important that all our staff participate in the process of standardizing our recipes. It could not be dictated by the office. We created this team and we lovingly refer to them as our MARD team. Our team consists of 2 secondary and 2 elementary managers. At the beginning of each year, we meet about every other week and they gather feedback from their assigned kitchens and come to the table and discuss issues and concerns they are having with recipes. If there's something the kids don't like or if a recipe isn't turning out the way they want, then we address it. If a product isn't performing like we want it to, this is where it comes to our attention. The managers and kitchen staff have a voice and they are the ones that bring the concerns to the MARD team. We're able to solve so many issues with our recipes by having this meeting. The MARD team then tests recipes and works to update and modify as necessary. They also look at instructions to make sure the team can interpret what is intended. One thing that we found was that each member of the MARD team can produce a recipe and bring it to the meeting, and we will have 4 different versions of the same recipe. So it's been very eye-opening for all of us to make sure that our instructions are very clear. Our managers in training are asked to select a recipe and make suggestions to improve quality or ease of production. We've had some wonderful feedback and suggestions that have made things much better. It also sends the message to these new trainings that everyone plays a part in our success. So here's an example of a recipe before modification and after. They're a little difficult to see on this slide, but I mostly wanted to share just the difference in the amount of instructions. The before simply had the crediting information, and as you can see on the after, it includes much more information. So these are not exactly the same recipe as we switch to a new menu planning program, but they're essentially an Asian rice bowl with the same amount of ingredients. Okay, this is a little better picture of the first recipe. Again, you can see there is just crediting information, no instructions of pretty much anything beyond that. So this is a bigger picture of the after, and you can see that the additional recipe is needed. There are cooking temps for each of the items, including the sauce and the chicken. Critical control points have been included. We have 2 ways to serve the product. And this is one thing Pat touched on is sometimes in our kitchens we have different equipment, and so we wanted to make sure that on some of our recipes, when we know there will be different equipment, that we give them some options. The equipment needed to share the carrots is listed. There's a special hint that the Asian sauce equals 2 quarts, which makes it easier to plan. Crediting is included so they know that 1 bowl will equal 1 meat alternate, 1 grain, and then the vegetable crediting is included also. The holding temp is included, and I'm sure there are still things that can be added, but as you can see, the after is much improved. Okay, so we're going to do a polling question. And to select the best choice, standardized recipes that provide, and then choose the one that you feel is the best answer. Weight quantities are better than volume. Food cooking temperatures negate food safety programs. Clear instructions will help achieve desired results. And multiple ingredients allow recipe modifications. So go ahead and select the one that you feel is the best answer that fills in that blank. Okay, we'll keep that open for just a second. And I think the results are in. Okay, very good. Very obvious that clear instructions will help achieve desired results. We certainly don't want recipe modifications, and again, like Pat stated, it changes the nutrition value, and temperatures. Food safety is always the top of our program. So clear instructions will help achieve those desired results, and we have seen that with our staff. Okay, now we will open it up for questions. So here's a great question. Is this webinar designed for folks that have never written recipes? I think that I kind of fall in that category when I first started. Yeah, the information that Pat gave is great to get started, but for us, we just had to start one recipe at a time, and our managers that we brought together to help review them was invaluable. So the ones who are actually feet on the ground out in the kitchens provided incredible feedback. Another question is, support professional, we find it challenging for staff to follow standardized recipes and submit feedback. Any suggestions for this? I would recommend you put a team together and involve your managers, involve your support staff. Getting the buy-in and the feedback from your kitchens it's invaluable. So here's a comment that says, we have recipe binders that we send to schools at the beginning of each school year. We collect and update them each summer. That's fantastic. Every time we have updated a recipe and feel like it is satisfactory, then we make sure to let everybody know to reprint that recipe also. So the question is, does the MARD team change the recipe or just make it more clear to understand? Actually, both. We actually have worked through a marinara recipe pretty much the whole year, and literally we change the flavor, then we change the instructions, and then we come back, and it really is a process. 3 weeks. Yeah, definitely, because you go out, you do tests with the kids, you get buy-in, you see if your changes are working and acceptable. One thing we found is with our spaghetti sauce recipe, we took the ground beef out to use it in multiple applications, and it changed the flavor a little bit. So we worked with that. But yeah, our MARD team, they're my experts, and they make changes to the recipe and help make it more make it more clear to understand. So question is, what are the main reasons for a recipe to be standardized? For us, it will obviously, so that the nutrition values and the content remains the same. so that your yield is the same, and so you have consistency. It helps in your purchasing, it helps in production, but also for our kids, it's crucial for them, I think, to have the same food across our district. So when our MARD team meets, we actually meet in our district office, in our administrative office, and it's more of an admin meeting. They have tested the recipes in their kitchens, and then they bring their results to that meeting in our office. One question is, many staff are accustomed to making food according to their preferences rather than following recipes. Can you suggest any strategies to increase staff use of standardized recipes in the kitchen during regular meal service? That's probably a common concern for many of us in the child nutrition industry. For us, we've just had to educate our staff. We've had to teach them that as an adult, our palates are different than the children, and so food tastes different to each of us, but also to educate them on the nutrition content that needs to be in those recipes. And over the years, we've really gotten better buy-in, but it's just an education process for us. So here's a question about our MARD team. Do the individuals on the team have special skills in cooking and baking, or would some specific skills be used in selecting individuals for such a team? You know, when we first started our team, we said to the managers, you choose the manager that you feel will represent you best, who you feel like will represent you. And so we did not handpick anybody. We let the managers choose. They voted who they wanted on our MARD team. And again, it was kind of education. This is what we need. This is why we're doing what we're doing. And we found that we have some pretty talented managers. So I didn't feel like we needed to make any changes to who they voted for. So how did we adjust the marinara recipe? Was it based on student feedback? What feedback was collected, and how did you structure the feedback process? So the process that we did with our marinara recipe was not very scientific. We just had lots of complaints from our staff to start with that they did not like the flavor. And so it came through the MARD team, and we tested it, and we adjusted the spices. And like Pat said, the herbs are a little bit tricky because you don't increase and decrease on the same ratio. And so we had to do a lot of flavor testing back with the staff. We did samples with our students. And like I said, it was more managers just going out and talking to our students. And to be honest, we're still working on the marinara for some reason. And y'all know sometimes our product comes in, and sometimes just the sodium content in the canned tomatoes can change, and it does change those recipes. So standardizing, making sure we have the same product every single time, and that somebody didn't get carried away. It's an ongoing process, but we just keep bringing it back to the table, taking it back to our students, and I think we've gotten to a point where I think we're pretty good. But you know, in another month or two, it seems like just some recipes we work on for a really long time. Other recipes we're able to tackle them. And by bringing your MARD team together, and you have managers with different experience, different schools, when they talk amongst themselves, they find that, oh, wait, you do it, this way. Well, I thought it was this way, and they resolve a lot of things themselves. So it's just been super valuable for us to have that team. Okay, so thank you, everybody. Those were wonderful questions. And I will go ahead and turn this presentation back to Macy.
Thanks, everyone, for your attendance today. There were a couple questions that came in asking about resources. And so right now we have a resource page for you. You can find the PowerPoint template once we have the recorded version posted to the ICN website. All these direct links. One of the questions was, is there a template out there for standardizing recipes? The Minnesota Department of Education actually provides a template for standardized recipes. The ICN, we have YU Standardized Recipe Fact Sheet. It's in the Tools and Tips for Trainers section under Food Service Management Skills. The Montana Department of Public Health has a resource that provides a detailed information about what a standardized recipe is, the importance of using a standardized recipe, information included in a standardized recipe, and how to develop a standardized recipe. So if this concept is new to you, that's a great resource you can go find a little bit more detail about. The School Nutrition Association wrote an article called What's Standard About Standardized Recipes? It provides information about why these are valuable tools in schools for school nutrition operations and how you can create them. And then USDA F&S Team Nutrition provides the menu planner resource, and it's a comprehensive guide for local school nutrition professionals to assist in developing healthy, safe, affordable, and appealing school meals and snacks that meet the meal pattern requirements. So these are some awesome resources that are available that you can go check out for more information. Before we end the webinar, I would like to call attention to a few of the face-to-face training topics that are new from the Institute of Child Nutrition. Some of our procurement training offerings are Buy American, U.S. Agriculture Supporting Healthy School Meals. It's a 2-hour training. Forecasting the Procurement of Foods, it's a 4-hour training. And then Procurement of Foods Cooperative Purchasing Groups, that's a 6-hour training. We also have a new Food Allergies for School Nutrition Directors. This is a 12-hour training. The length is because it really looks at what your food allergy plan is, and if you don't have one in place, you leave the training having developed a food allergy plan. We will be piloting, or actually we just piloted food allergies for school nutrition managers and staff, and so that will be coming out soon. It's a 4-hour training. Then we have a Train the Trainer, training culturally diverse groups. That's a 4-hour training. We have a lot more if you go to our website and check out all of our ICN face-to-face training options. There was a question that came in earlier. What does STAR stand from stand for? Just to let you know the answer to that, it stands for strategies, training, action plans, and resources. And then a final reminder, today's webinar has been recorded and you can come back and view it by visiting the ICN website, and the site is www.theicn.org/star. You will be receiving an email. When you get that email, please complete the evaluation for the webinar, and then we will be able to send you your certificate 48 hours later. Thanks again to Pat and to Heather for being our presenters today. This concludes our webinar.